Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle. That's Joe Clark above me on the screen as always. And we're going to be talking about Week 1, the Steelers' 34-32 victory over the New York Jets. We're going to dive into previewing Week 2 at home against the Seattle Seahawks. And then finally go over some injury news, some roster moves, and more. Joe, before we dive in, how's everything going? Did you enjoy the first week of football?
Going well. Yeah, I mean, it was just like almost every single Steelers game for the past 6 years where it's a heart attack for 95% of it. But they eked out the win, so it was a good time. Had my parents over for the game, so it was an enjoyable viewing experience.
Nice, very good. Of all of the games across the NFL, there was a couple of shockers, I guess. Was there one that surprised you more than the others?
I would say probably the Monday night game, the way JJ McCarthy kind of bounced back from a rough first half. It seemed like he was getting hit or every pass was getting tipped, and all of a sudden in the second half he completely turned things around. I mean, that game, obviously the Bills game was crazy, but they're a high level team. I think it was just a little more surprising for a quarterback making his first regular season start. To me, to have the performance that he had on a big stage on the road. So that was definitely an interesting game across the league to watch.
Of course, the Ravens blew it, which was nice to see. The Bengals and Browns game was close. To me, I don't know. Do you think that's the Bengals underperforming there, the Browns overperforming? Are they better than expected? What did you watch that game at all?
Yeah, I think it's more so the Bengals underperforming. I mean, they've had tendency to do that early in the season. So I would say more so it's the Bengals, but who knows? Maybe the Browns can surprise some people. I mean, 2 years ago with Joe Flacco, they looked good. Harold Fanning, their rookie tight end, looked pretty solid. So Dylan Sampson, too, the rookie running back, was a weapon out of the backfield catching passes. So maybe the Browns can surprise some people, but right now I'd put that more on the Bengals underperforming. It just seems par for the course for them early in the season over the last few years.
Yeah, so for a brief time at least, the Steelers are sitting in the lead, or at least tied for the lead in the AFC North. Stop the count. End the season now if we could. But we're going to dive into the game action here for week 1. Steelers, like we said, 34-32 over the Jets. Aaron Rodgers looked good. The defense looked bad. Joe, where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of have to start with Rodgers because there's so many questions coming in about how the offense would look with him under center, and he fit in really well with Arthur Smith's scheme. He looked really well running the play action. He spread the ball around. He got the ball over the middle of the field, and he threw 4 touchdown passes on a day, where the run game wasn't working and the defense struggled. Those are the games that, the past few years the Steelers have lost. They haven't really been able to win offensive shootouts, and Rodgers proved that on a day where the defense is going to get gashed on the ground and they're not going to get much through the ground themselves, they're still going to be able to be competitive. So I think, I mean, it's only week 1, but I think that's definitely a strong sign for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Rodgers 4 touchdowns. I think he had a good game, but I also think that they left some plays out there. There was a couple of plays where you could see Rodgers was not pleased with himself, where maybe he threw behind his target a little bit. There was a couple where, they probably could have been completions where they were broken up because he just didn't place the ball in the right spot and kind of left the opportunity for defenders to punch that ball away. And so you get the feeling that they left some meat on the bone in that game, which is kind of a crazy thing. Usually for the Steelers, 34 points over the last, 4-5 plus seasons has been kind of the ceiling. And now we're talking about, wow, they really could have probably hung more points on them. I mean, and they didn't even have a run game going. They had, 50, was it 53 or 50? Not very many rushing yards. How many? I'll pull this
Uh,
up here. 53. Yeah, I nailed it. Wow. Yeah, 53 total rushing yards, and their top rusher at 37, Jalen Warren, with 11 carries. So it wasn't efficient. It wasn't productive, and they still managed to score that much with basically being a one-dimensional team. Now, they did supplement the rush, the lack of a run game with a lot of screens, which was nice to see. The Steelers haven't had this screen game working in years. It's kind of been like a joke if you follow the Steelers, how bad their screen game has been in recent years. And that's come alive, and, kind of thank you to players like Jonnu Smith, who, is a good yards after the catch kind of guy, and particularly DK Metcalf. And this is a guy a lot of people kind of viewed as like, all right, well, you're just kind of getting George Pickens 2.0 in terms of a down the field threat. And the Steelers didn't really use him that way at all. Matter of fact, I think pretty much all of his targets were within 10 yards. I can't think of any that weren't. And so he had 7 targets, 4 receptions, 83 yards. A lot of that was just him catching the ball short, running long. There was a couple that, you really look at it and where he caught it, you thought, there's no way he's going to pick up more than 3 or 4 yards here. And next thing you know, he has an explosive gain of 23. And that's a testament to how fast he can get up to speed, which is rare for a guy his size. I think we're going to see some 70-yard kind of breakaway screen passes this year if week 1 was any indication. So a lot to be excited about. I think, Arthur Smith did kind of scheme up a good offensive performance, if you will, and maybe helped Aaron Rodgers. Not that that is a knock on Aaron Rodgers. That's actually a good thing for this offense. If Arthur Smith is making things easy on them, then that tells you that there's room to grow as the players kind of start to play up to their potential. And so, yeah, nothing but encouraging stuff really from the offense other than the run game. Joe, the run game, it was kind of odd. Kenneth Gainwell more or less got the start and saw more snaps than Jalen Warren. He didn't get more carries necessarily, but he did get more snaps. And I think in terms of total touches, they were right about even, maybe Gainwell 1 or 2 less if you include the reception. So was that surprising to you? I know there was some kind of rumblings that Gainwell was going to be used more than most people expected, but I don't know if I expected it to be kind of that distribution of snaps.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised that it was, a little bit more than Warren, basically even between the two of them. I thought, Gainwell would be involved. I thought he was going to be the clear number 2, but instead there was basically 1A and 1B. So that definitely surprised me. I mean, on some level, it makes sense. He played more in the preseason than Jalen Warren did, so maybe a little more game readiness there. But they do offer similar skill set, good in the receiving game, good as pass blockers. So for week 1, I see why they did it, but I'm curious to see how it looks going forward. Is Gainwell going to continue to kind of be the de facto 1A, 1B back in this backfield with Warren, or is he going to cede some more snaps going forward? And, against Seattle, I think we could see a lot more Kenneth Gainwell because Seattle has a good pass rush and, a solid front 7. So it wouldn't be surprising if they utilized him the similar way they did week 1. But I know Arthur Smith said before the season that it's going to be a weekly game by game sort of thing, how they break up that 3-man rotation with those two and Caleb Johnson. So it could fluctuate throughout the year, but at least for now, I think Kenneth Gainwell is going to stay involved in this offense, and definitely was a little bit surprised just how much he played.
Yeah, and Caleb Johnson, I think 2 snaps, 1 carry, -2 yards, although that -2 yards turned into a 15-yard gain, courtesy of I think it was a late hit or some kind of a unsportsmanlike personal foul type penalty there. So Caleb Johnson's more or less an afterthought on offense at the moment. I don't really know if that's going to inch up. I guess that'll depend if this run game kind of is putting up these 40, 50, 60-yard performances for 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe they do give him a little more just for the sake of trying to shake things up a little bit. That could be a potential, but you have to factor in on the kick return, he did actually have a fumble. They didn't lose it, but Mike Tomlin doesn't like that. That's not going to earn you more carries, and so he needs to make sure, first and foremost, that those opportunities he gets on kick return are going well, and at the very least, you're not fumbling the ball. So, yeah, the offense, I don't know if there's a lot more we want to talk about. Actually, Calvin Austin III, let's talk about that, and Roman Wilson, the wide receiver too, seems to have worked itself out in a big way, I'd say. Calvin Austin had, 43 snaps or somewhere in that ballpark. Roman Wilson had 10. Ben Skowronek had 10. Scotty Miller had 9, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. And so Calvin Austin, obviously far and away the most snaps after a DK Metcalf, and very clear who was the wide receiver 2. Roman Wilson didn't even get a target. Ben Skowronek caught the first touchdown of the season. Joe, I think a lot of hype around Calvin Austin at the moment, and deservedly so. 4 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. And really, he could have maybe caught that fourth quarter pass had he not been interfered at the end of the game, which would have put him over 100 yards, and we'd probably be having even more hype around him. But is it more surprising to see him do that well? Or is it more surprising to see Roman Wilson basically just be a non-factor after all that hype?
I think it's a little bit more surprising to see Roman Wilson be a non-factor. I think with Calvin Austin, he had a strong year last year, and you're obviously going to look to build upon that. And he did so, early in the season. That's what you want to see. That's not necessarily what you expect to see, but for a guy that was deemed the wide receiver too by in mini camp and has had the hype and had some of the production last year, I think you want to see him get off to a strong start. So it was a little more surprising to see Roman Wilson after a strong preseason, after a strong finish of training camp, not really be involved at all. But at the same time, it would have been nice if he had a big game, a strong start to the year. I talked about in my terrible take that, it was gonna have to be him or Calvin Austin to kind of quiet some of the noise about the Steelers not having a wide receiver too. And Calvin Austin, despite, missing time with an injury before the season, he was the guy that stepped up. So Wilson just didn't really get the opportunities, was on the field much, which is fine because he only had 5 snaps all of last season. So expecting him to really play a big role early in the season may have been, a little unrealistic. So I'm not overly surprised by it, but I do think, the fact he wasn't on the field more and we didn't see more of him, especially with, some of the praise Aaron Rodgers had for him, would be more surprising than Calvin Austin taking that step forward.
Yeah, and everything we heard, I mean, there's insider buzz saying they've never heard so many team sources raving about Roman Wilson, and so I think that there's still opportunities to get him in the mix. And Mike Tomlin said after the game, or maybe it was on Tuesday actually, that it's going to be based on matchups, and they have a bunch of guys that have specialized skill sets, and those skill sets will be highlighted some weeks and maybe not as visible in other weeks. And so I guess right now they're kind of viewing Roman Wilson as a guy with a skill set that they just didn't happen to need in this last game. He also mentioned the fact that they weren't possessing the ball, which goes back to the run game. So Roman Wilson will find his opportunities, but it wasn't in week one. The issue, and this was kind of always the issue, is you're not going to be able to really get both of them snaps a lot of the time, especially if Broderick Jones is going to play as poorly as he did. The offensive line allowing 4 sacks on Aaron Rodgers, 3 of those from Broderick Jones. I think there was, it was 7 total quarterback hits on Rodgers, and so Aaron Rodgers is pacing for very, very high and unsustainable numbers on both the hits and the sacks category, numbers that a 41-year-old simply can't sustain. I mean, if you have 3-4 more games like week one, we could be talking about injuries and maybe some nagging injuries if they're lucky. If not, then maybe something more serious that keeps him out for part or all of the season. So you can't have that. But the point being, the offensive line's going to need help, which means you need extra tight ends on the field, chipping guys. And if you have extra tight ends on the field, you have less receivers on the field. And right now, you can't justify taking Calvin Austin or DK Metcalf off the field. And so that means Roman Wilson's the odd man out. So really, the key in my mind to getting Roman Wilson on the field more is you better hope these tackles improve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're really running out of excuses here for Broderick Jones. I thought Trey Fontana was mostly solid. A few reps I'm sure he'd like to have back, but Broderick Jones, it's last few years it's always playing out of position. He's playing right tackle, but now he's played more right tackle than left tackle. And even though that's his natural position, because it's what he played in college, I think a guy in year 3 now, you're running out of he's had all off season to work at left tackle. He's got to improve. I mean, he's great at taking accountability. He's taken all the accountability for struggles, but at some point has to show up on the field. Like, he looks lost out there sometimes, and it's becoming a serious issue. And if it shows up again on Sunday, then the Steelers might have to really look deep inside themselves and figure out if Broderick Jones can really sustain the left tackle position all season.
Yeah, and it's just, gosh, I don't even know where you start there. It's like they didn't seem to want to move Fautanu over to the left, and if you do, then it doesn't really make a difference because then you have issues on the right. I mean, I guess you'd rather protect Aaron Rodgers' blind side so he's not getting blasted from where he can't even see. But yeah, and Andrus Peat or Calvin Anderson, neither of those seem like great solutions, though at some point you have to look at them and say, well, honestly, are they better than Broderick Jones? And I think we're getting close to that point where one of them might be. At least they're throwing punches. I've said it 100 times, and dating back to last year and some of those horrible starts that Broderick Jones had last year. He just doesn't punch. He doesn't know when to punch. His hands are just kind of sitting idly out too wide. He's kind of winding up his arms as if he's going to punch, but he never punches. And so he just kind of gives up basically any advantage or any possible way to win the rep. You can't win if you're not using your hands. And it's maddening to me. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I'd rather see him wildly punch and just like miss than what he's doing now. It's very, very mind-boggling. But anyway, offensive line is the main concern right now on offense, and that's playing into both the Aaron Rodgers sack issue and the run game issue. And Aaron Rodgers kind of talked about his back bugging him, if you will. He said it was tight, according to ESPN's Brooke Pryor yesterday. He pointed to his back being tight in that first game and maybe said he couldn't move as much as he would like to in a normal game. And so if his back's already tight and he's taking that many hits, that is not a good sign. I mean, at this point, Joe, do you think Broderick Jones is the starting tackle by, I don't know, after the bye? So what would that be? Like October, when they come back from Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess right now, I would probably say no. But like you said, like where's the alternative? Is it Andrews Pete, who's primarily played guard? Is it Calvin Anderson, who, I mean, it was very limited snaps last year, but didn't look great in his very limited snaps last season. I mean, for a team that's been holding on to their, 2026 draft capital like their precious diamonds, are they really going to move a pick to acquire an offensive tackle, around the trade deadline or before the trade deadline? So it's tough, but I mean, if he keeps playing the way he did on Sunday, which has been a habit for him dating back to last season, I really don't think you can keep him as a starter when he's allowing multiple sacks a game. Like it's ugly. So I mean, if I had to guess right now, I would probably say no, but it is tough finding who, the alternative would be.
Yeah, the big concern for this team, and I think that's pretty much everything we wanted to talk about for week one. Week two preview. So the Seahawks, the Steelers will be hosting their first game of the year here at Acrisure Stadium. And the Seahawks are 0-1 after a loss to the San Francisco 49ers. They lost that game, what was it, 17-13? A bit of a misleading score because I think it was more lopsided than the score shows, because I believe the Seahawks just got beat pretty soundly in terms of yards allowed and yards gained. So the 49ers had nearly 400 yards, 384. The Seahawks had 230. The 49ers ran 72 plays as opposed to the Seahawks 50. And the Seahawks went 3 for 10 on third down. It just wasn't a good performance for the Seahawks. And this is a team who many thought would have a lot of success running the ball this year with Kenneth Walker, and Zach Charbonnet over there. And so they have a young offensive line, much like the Steelers, but I think they have slightly more established pieces. They just paid, Abraham Lucas just got paid, I think. And they have a couple other young studs on that offensive line that are, kind of coming into their own at the moment. And they only gained 84 yards on the ground. And so I think we're about to see, are the Steelers going to allow the Seahawks to have their breakout rush performance after allowing 182 yards last week, or is this the get-right game, Joe?
I would hope that it's the get-right game because Kenneth Walker did not look very good at all. Charbonnet was a little bit better, but still, neither of those guys were anything all that special. I mean, their longest run of the game was a 9-yard scramble by Sam Darnold. So I would like to think the Steelers, they've emphasized the importance of run defense. It was Darius Slay said after the game. Kim Hayward basically said, this isn't the Steelers standard. We have to be better. Mike Tomlin got on them. I mean, after the way they ended last season, I think you really have to treat this as a very important game when it comes to stopping the run. I'm personally not very worried about Sam Darnold beating them through the air, so I think they should really, key in and hone in and focus on stopping the run. And if they don't, then 2 back-to-back weeks of poor rush defense will be cause for concern at that point. 1 week, a mobile quarterback with Justin Fields, a strong running back in Breece Hall. You can maybe chalk it off a little bit as maybe a one-off, but if they struggle again on Sunday, then we should be worried. But I do think they're going to find a way to make this a get-right game.
Yeah, Darius Slay said that Mike Tomlin had some tough conversations with them in the meeting room. He was hard on them. And obviously, Tomlin put high expectations on this team when he said that they could do historic things. He later said, he clarified that comment and later said, I intentionally put that out there because I want to challenge these guys. And I think that they have the talent. And now it's just about them living up to it. And he kind of made that clear to the team. And so week one was more or less unacceptable towards achieving that goal. I mean, you compare this back to the 2008 defense. I think the most rushing yards that they ever allowed was like 120 something. And most, I think like 8 of their 16 opponents rushed for under 70 per game. And so if the Steelers, the 2008 is more or less the Steelers' litmus test for are you a historic defense in terms of the modern era? And, right now the answer is definitely not. Yeah, I think they could have a get-right game. I do worry because Derek Harmon's not back yet. He's still injured. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you're going to have mostly the same personnel out there. You're going to have Cam Hayward, who, hopefully was just shaking off the rust. It wasn't his best game. Keanu Benton, probably one of the worst games of his career, maybe the worst game of his career, getting blown off the line of scrimmage. Just a big part of why they weren't able to stop the run. They had all kinds of room right at the in the middle of the defense, and you can't allow that. And Mike Tomlin was asked about Y.A. Black playing more at nose tackle, and I mean, he said certainly open to it in the future. It didn't really sound like they were open to making that change now, and so I mean, Isaiah Loudermilk, I think, technically got the start at defensive end. Y.A. Black played not that many snaps, like 20-something, or I can't remember the exact number. It wasn't a ton. And so maybe the answer is just playing Y.A. Black more than Isaiah Loudermilk. I don't know, but it is worrisome to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Batten was a mess, and it's a real question of how long he can stick at nose tackle because he hasn't performed the way you would expect him to perform through his first 2 years. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was, on Sunday, but he was a disaster on Sunday. So if that continues, then they really do have to think long and hard about a nose tackle replacement. Why Black has the body type to play the nose, even though the Steelers have been, pretty contented keeping him at defensive end. But if Benton continues to look the way he looked on Sunday, they have to make a change there and maybe kick Benton outside or figure out what to do with him, make him more of a rotational guy. But that was a really, really ugly performance by him on Sunday.
Yeah, and moving on to the Seahawks passing game, Sam Darnold only had 150 yards, 123 of those to Jackson Smith-Njigba. And the Steelers, one thing, even when their defense wasn't strong at times, they have been good at taking away other teams' top options for the most part. Obviously, last year, the Ravens, that wasn't the case with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and running all over the Steelers. But you even look back to that Eagles game, Saquon Barkley wasn't the guy who beat them, really. And so you talk about basically their entire offense running through one guy, one receiver, and the Steelers have said that they have the personnel to match up against anybody. You have Jalen Ramsey you could put on him. I think Darius Slay you probably don't want to put on him after week one. He kind of got burnt a couple times there in week one, but hopefully Joey Porter Jr. is back in the mix. I think, hopefully you can shut down a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba, and at that point, you can kind of make them one-dimensional. I guess you don't really want to make them one-dimensional as a run team, but I think that's probably what they're going to do is try to run all over the Steelers. Teams are going to run at this team until the Steelers prove they can stop it because it's been, 6-7 straight games in a row now dating back to last year that they can't. So where else you want to go with the Seahawks and previewing this game? What are some matchups that you're looking forward to here?
Yeah, you mentioned Jackson Smith-Njigba. If the Steelers put Jalen Ramsey on, whoever the Steelers put on him, they have to shut him down. He had 13 targets. The rest of the team had 9. Cooper Kupp did not look anything like the Cooper Kupp we've seen in the past. There was a route, I think the announcers pointed it out, that he's lived on his whole career. It's like a little shimmy from the slot. He had a bad drop, couldn't get to the ball. He only had 3 targets. At tight end, they have AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo. AJ Barner significantly outsnapped Arroyo because he's a better run blocker. Arroyo only had 1 catch, so they didn't really get the ball to their running backs much. Their entire passing offense flowed through JSN. So I think taking him out of the game is going to be huge if they take him out of the game.
It's a
The
bit.
Seahawks really don't have anybody else that is going to beat you through the air, and then you can really key in on stopping the run. And I mean, the Steelers have the personnel, I think, that they can take him out of the game. I mean, he's not going to get shut out, I don't think, but hold him to 3, 4 catches under 70-ish yards, and the Steelers will win this game, I think.
Yeah, some other matchups. I think we're probably looking for TJ Watt to have a more productive game. I think he was disruptive enough, but the rookie Armand Membu, I think, was Pro Football Focus's top tackle of the week or top rookie, or he was one of the top graded players of the week. And you don't want to see that when TJ Watt is against that player. And obviously the Steelers just paid him a bunch of money, and there's high expectations. They did move him around a little bit. I don't actually have the snap count. I haven't looked at exactly how many snaps he spent elsewhere, but I noticed he wasn't on his typical spot a couple of snaps, and so hopefully they expand that a little bit more, and you hope to really see a more impactful game there from TJ Watt. Some other matchups to consider. I mean, I would really like to see Peyton Wilson step up as well. It's going to be Peyton Wilson versus like a, Zach Charbonnet. He's a good receiving back. And I think, Kenneth Walker can receive too in his own right. But I think Charbonnet is more of a receiving back. And Peyton Wilson kind of had a rough game as well after a pretty promising rookie season and a promising offseason. A lot of buzz around Peyton Wilson. He didn't end up playing all that well. I think that's one of my key matchups is I want to see Peyton Wilson involved. I want to see him making 6, 7, 8, even double-digit tackles would be nice. And, yeah, part of that's because guys like Benton were getting blown off the line, and, these inside backers had a hard time kind of getting off blocks and getting around blocks, and they were kind of getting caught in weird pockets because the defensive front wasn't holding up well. So it's not just on Wilson, but I do want to see him take another step here this week. Do you have anything else to talk about with the Seahawks here?
No, I mean, their pass rush, like we talked about earlier, is talented. They have Uchenna Nwosu, they have Leonard Williams, they signed DeMarcus Lawrence. All three of those guys are very capable of getting after the passer, so you need to see the Steelers hold up better. You can't have Rodgers taking all these hits early in the season, especially, with their late season slate. So, I mean, we touched on that a lot earlier, but definitely something to note that I think the pass protection has to be significantly better this week.
All right, well, we'll move on to the injury report so far and some of the roster moves that have happened. The big one being Jabrill Peppers was brought in, and that's exciting news for some. I remember wanting Peppers in the draft way back when. This was a guy that was drafted in the first round to the Browns as their second first-round pick of that draft, and he's played for the Patriots and stuff since, and I think he's made some big plays against the Steelers, and we know how the Steelers like to circle back to some of those guys and pick them up. So Peppers is exciting, but unfortunately it's because, or partially because at least, Deshaun Elliott was injured in week 1. That MetLife Stadium turf may be having something to do with it. His cleat got caught and his knee bent awkwardly. It kind of looked pretty bad at first, but it appears, it seems to be a grade 1 MCL type. There hasn't been any actual reporting on that, but the reporting is that he maybe only missed 2 weeks, and so that speaks grade 1 MCL. Joe, that changes how the defense operates a little bit in the secondary because Jalen Ramsey might not be able to play roam around as much because, especially when Joey Porter Jr. was out, which is another injury we need to talk about. But the secondary, which was supposed to be able to move around and create, confusing looks, really wasn't able to at times last week. Talk about the impact of Deshaun Elliott and maybe Joey Porter Jr. being out.
Yeah, so Joey Porter Jr.'s got a hamstring. If he's out, then I think you have to play Jalen Ramsey as the outside cornerback across from Darius Slay. So, like you said, he won't be able to roam and move around. I mean, he said after the game, I think it was the first time in a game he'd played every defensive position, but that obviously got limited when Elliott went out. I do think Peppers is a good replacement, at least for now, for Elliott, because he can get downhill and do a lot of the similar things in the run game that Elliott was able to do for the Steelers. He's athletic. I am a little worried about rust with him just because he only played, 6 games last season. He was suspended for an off the field thing. So he didn't play a lot last year. I mean, he was in training camp and played in the preseason with New England, so it's not as if he's gone that long without playing football, but didn't play week one, getting up to speed in a new scheme. So a little bit worried about rust with him there. So how much he'll play, I think, is up for debate. But I do think he is a good replacement for Elliott, but it does limit Pittsburgh's defensive versatility. I mean, Chuck Clark came in. I thought he played fairly well filling in for Elliott. I think he led the team in total tackles with, I want to say 8 maybe. So, um, good. That's what you want to see from him. Glad that he circled back to the roster. Juan Thornhill. I mean, I think you have a fine safety trio right now without Elliott, but the versatility is going to take a hit, and I'm curious to see how much it takes a hit if the Steelers will rely more on Peppers, if they'll stick with Clark and Thornhill for most of the game, or if Ramsey will rotate back and play more safety, how much they're going to be able to move him around. So it definitely does limit some of what they can do, but I do think they are in a pretty good spot because Peppers has some of the same traits that has made Elliott successful during his time in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I thought Elliott and Clark both looked pretty good. Not Elliott. Thornhill and Clark both looked pretty good. I think Thornhill he talked about playing down in the box a little bit more than he's used to. He's been pretty much exclusively a free safety type throughout his career, not a ton of snaps elsewhere. And I thought he looked good coming downhill. So that was encouraging to see. Chuck Clark, I think, filled in admirably as well. So if there was one position they couldn't really afford an injury, safety was near the top of the list. Maybe not at the top, but near. And yeah, I think it's a sigh of relief rather that Elliott is not going to be out long term. Hopefully back for their game in Ireland. If not, they have the bye week after. I would assume he would certainly be back for that week 6 game at that point. So another injury that happened was Malik Harrison at inside linebacker. Did that happen on? Was that a special teams play?
It was on the Justin Fields leg touchdown that he came in completely untouched.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he came up with a knee injury. He was already ruled out along with Elliott and Derek Harmon. And so inside linebacker, I mean, fortunately they have a lot of depth there. You got Cole Holcomb, who he didn't even play a snap, did he?
No.
And so you have plenty of depth there. I kind of would like to see more Holcomb, to be honest. I think there's really no reason not to play him. He looked good in the preseason. He's back to healthy, and he was a heck of a player for the Steelers for the short time they had him a couple years ago. And I think, Peyton Wilson, at the very least, you should make him feel a little uncomfortable after that week 1 performance and maybe put Holcomb in there a little bit more. So I would like to see that personally. And, I don't know if we have a ton of information on the Harrison injury yet, do we?
He went on IR yesterday, so he'll miss at least 4 weeks. We just know it's a knee. No, nothing beyond that. It's a knee injury and that he's on IR.
Well, there you have it. So not a ton else to talk about in terms of the injury stuff right now. It was a positive sign that Aaron Rodgers wasn't on the injury report. That more or less tells you that back tightness. I mean, if it was an actual injury that they were concerned about, they'd be required to list it. They did not, and so you can only assume that maybe he was just having some old man, woke up on the wrong side of the bed type of back tightness in that game, and hopefully that doesn't continue moving forward. So we're going to move into our listener question for the show to wrap things up. If you want to have your question answered, that's 412-254-3145. The number's also at the bottom of the screen. You can call, you can leave us a voicemail, or you can text us. Just tell us your name and where you're from. This one from our good buddy Brett in San Angelo.
Hello, Depot Dive. This is Brett from San Angelo. And my question/discussion point is a focus, if you will, on the reaction to the game. I thought when you talk about, kind of playoff aspirations, there was a plus and a huge minus from this game. The plus was they did demonstrate, I think, definitively that this offense could win a playoff game if necessary. I think that question has now pretty much been answered. They can put up 30 if they have to. And you would expect that with a previously Super Bowl winning quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. However, I think a bigger negative to me is the complete ineffectiveness in the running game again. And people are kind of brushing that off, but to be honest, this is not a new thing. It's not even, it's a continuation of what we saw at the end of last year, but it's also really kind of the dirty little secret. It's been there for a couple of years. You've seen it when teams have been willing to listen or kind of ignore that a few negative plays and stay disciplined and stay aggressive in the running game. Teams like Dallas and Indianapolis last year battle over. You saw people run in the playoffs 2 years ago against the Steelers. This is not new. And unfortunately, I haven't seen anything so far in either the preseason or obviously this first game to say that we even have a potential solution for that. It does not look pretty. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll start listening to the answer.
All right, thank you for the question, Brett. And yeah, I think we talked about a lot of this at the top of the show, but we can dive in a little bit more here to wrap things up. I think, yeah, I mean, I think you said the offense showed it was capable of maybe winning a playoff game, and you said, in your opinion, they've kind of proved that with that performance. I would caution that last year the Steelers had that game against the Bengals where they hung all those points on the Bengals, Russell Wilson, and that kind of triggered all this playoff talk with the Steelers. And I think I got swept up in it as well. A lot of us did. And so, yeah, I mean, you don't want to draw any hard conclusions from one game. I think the Jets do have a fairly good defense. I don't think that they're going to be allowing 30-plus points every game. But I don't think that 30-plus points per game is sustainable if you're only rushing for 53 yards. And so I don't know necessarily that they have proven that. Better teams that are going to be able to take away the pass a little better. If they make the Steelers one-dimensional where they have to pass and then they're not able to really do the stuff downfield and the screen game isn't working. I mean, this just as easily could have been a pretty ugly offensive performance for the Steelers if some of the screen stuff wasn't working. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not fully sold on the offense yet, but both your points are well taken.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you need to see more sustainability from the offense. The run game wasn't good in training camp, wasn't good in the preseason, so definitely a little bit of a concern here. But the offensive line wasn't great blocking the run. I think Mason McCormick was the only player who graded with above like a 60 in PFF and run blocking. So some of that is just getting back into it and getting the offensive line better against the run. And if that doesn't happen, then the Steelers might struggle to run the ball this season. And unfortunately, that wouldn't be anything new, but I'm at least a little bit hopeful they'll be able to turn things around.
All right, well, thank you for the question, Brett. Again, if you guys want your question answered, 412-254-3145. Text, call, leave us your name, leave us a question, and it will be answered on a future episode on Thursdays. We will catch you guys next week. I'm Ross. That is Joe. And thank you for watching.